Revealed, how one incredible act of kindness from a 12-year-old girl changed 2 lives forever. Lily Johnson stood on the threshold of the animal shelter, the fading sunlight casting long shadows over the worn-out sign. Her heart raced with a mix of excitement and dread. This summer had to be different. Maplewood was staring down the barrel of despair. Today, she heard whispers that the shelter was on the chopping block, her sanctuary teetering on the edge of closure. It wasn't just a building full of lost souls, it was a place where her compassion blossomed, surrounding her with the love she felt for every cuddly creature within. But can one small girl really change the course of fate? As she stepped inside, the musty air washed over her like a familiar embrace. Sam, the former veterinarian with a gaze worn by years of hardship, sat slumped in a chair, his grizzled hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee. The twinkle in his eyes had long since dimmed, buried beneath layers of disappointment. Today, her heart ached for him too. Lily approached cautiously, her mind swirling with thoughts of how she could help him find a way back from the darkness. "Hey, Sam," she began, unwilling to let her fear of his reticence take hold. "I heard some bad news about the shelter." His brow furrowed, a cascade of emotions flooding his face. The last thing she wanted was to add to his burden. Each wrinkle etched deeper by the relentless weight of loss reminded her of her own fears. What would happen if they lost this place? Would they fade into memories like the rising mist? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Determination surged within her, clashing violently with doubt. If only Sam could see the potential in their partnership, but how? She pictured herself leading a fundraiser, all the community elders shaking their heads and dismissing her as just a child. What if her classmates laughed at her desire to fight? Anxiety coiled tight in her stomach. Could she muster the courage when no one believed in her except for the soft whimpers of the animals that surrounded them? "Lily, I just don't think it's possible. You don't understand how powerful they are," Sam whispered, his voice trailing off like the fading notes of a sad melody. Her heart sank, it mirrored his loss of hope. Yet, she needed him, needed that flicker of belief to ignite the storm brewing in her soul. Moments blurred as she envisioned the looming threat, a corporation ready to sweep in, erasing dreams as if they were footprints in the sand. The weight of their collective uncertainty threatened to suffocate her resolve. How could she stand up against such an immovable force? The shadows of despair crept into her thoughts, spiraling, wrapping around her heart. But right behind that darkness, the faint whispers of her mother's voice echoed, "Lily, remember who you are." That carried her an inch closer to clarity, a sliver of resurgence intertwining with her anguish. Questions consumed her thoughts. What if this land held more than just animals? What could it mean for her own story, her family's legacy? As minutes trickled away, hopelessness threatened to consume her. Just when she needed clarity most, the world outside felt dauntingly still. Sam's gaze met hers, trembling with uncertainty. They stood on a precipice. Could their partnership, forged by shared loneliness, become a bastion against the encroaching shadows? The answers danced tauntingly out of reach, leaving their hearts clenching tighter still. Time slipped, each second punctuated by an anxiety that felt impenetrable. Together, they faced an uncertain future, poised on the edge of possibility, as deep-rooted questions still lingered. How could they beat a corporation, and when hope seemed fleeting, would their shared courage be enough? Lily inhaled deeply, the familiar scent of dog food and cleaning supplies anchoring her amidst the storm of emotions. She had arrived determined to inspire hope, yet she stood paralyzed by the weight of Sam's despair, a reality that felt suffocating. Would he allow himself to believe in a path forward, or would they both drown in the shadows creeping around them? "Sam," she began, her voice firmer than she felt. "What if we create a plan? Something that shows the community how important this place really is." Her words tumbled forth like a gentle wave against a rocky shore, tentative yet earnest. His eyes, weary but watching, flickered with a hint of curiosity. "What kind of plan?" he asked, the skepticism still heavy in the air. But in that moment, she recognized a spark in Sam's eyes, a glimmer of the partnership she hoped to cultivate. Lily perched on the edge of his chair, leaning forward, urgency coursing through her. "We could host an adoption day, a showcase for the animals. We need to let everyone see how wonderful they are. Maybe we even raise some funds. I could design posters and we could posters." He interrupted, the hint of a smile creeping across his lips. "How would a 12-year-old design posters that catch attention?" "Just you wait," she exclaimed, feeling the fire ignite within her. Memories of her mother's craft supplies filled her mind, inspirations of glitter, bright colors, and illustrated stories that had always drawn people in. "We can share their stories, their personalities. Each animal has its own spark," and once people see that. Sam leaned back, evaluating her intensity. "You really think that's enough to change minds?" At that moment, her confidence surged. "We can't fight them without showing what we have to offer. But we need to start now. If we wait too long, it might really be too late." A silence enveloped the room, punctuated only by the soft whimper of a nearby puppy. Sam's profile revealed deep contemplation, as Lily's heart pounded with anticipation. Time seemed suspended between uncertainty and hope, the air electric with the possibility of change. Then, slowly, he nodded. "If we are going to do this, you'll need to can organize everything. Posters, flyers, even a speech. Can you handle that?" She felt a swell of exhilaration rush through her at his acceptance. "Yes. I'll do it." But the moment of joy was cradled in worry. Lily understood the enormity of her undertaking. She would be stepping into yet another world, a world where adults often dismiss children's contributions. Facing her classmates, potential naysayers, and perhaps worst of all, the corporation looming like a dark cloud demanded every ounce of bravery she possessed. Yet, a fierce determination settled over her. She would rise to the occasion because the shelter and the bond she now shared with the animals were worth it. Not just for them, but for herself. This was about becoming more than a girl seeking to defend something she cherished. It transformed into an opportunity for her to discover her voice and her potential. As she brainstormed ideas for the campaign, her mind throbbed with inspired thoughts and her heart drummed with commitment. Hours passed as she scribbled design sketches, catchy phrases, and heartfelt animal profiles rushed from her pen. But just then, a thought pierced through the haze of excitement. What if her efforts fell short? What if those animals never found their families? The corporation's cold indifference loomed large on the horizon as she felt a bulge of fear rise within her. Holding her breath, she reached for Sam's arm, pulling him into her whirlwind. "We'll do everything we can, right?" His eyes met hers, guarded but fierce. "I'll help you, Lily, every step of the way. But remember, it takes more than just shouting for people to listen." With that statement echoing in her ears, they could only move forward, stepping further and further into uncharted territory. They needed allies in this fight for survival, authentic voices who would amplify their call. As they prepared to forge this unexpected path, the stakes rose with every promise made. It was time for Lily to confront challenges she never imagined, to sculpt her destiny from the mold of courage. But with no clear vision ahead, she couldn't shake a crushing thought: would their combined resolve be enough to face the impending threat looming on the horizon? Lily awoke the next morning with a tumultuous blend of exhilaration and anxiety racing through her. The decision to plan the showcase felt simultaneously empowering and daunting. She had taken the first step, but the road ahead was shrouded in uncertainty. Today was pivotal, and she needed a plan more than a mere outline of events. She envisioned a narrative, opportunities that could pull the community into the shelter's reality and spark genuine interest. At breakfast, her fingers traced the edges of her notebook as she recalled the most compelling stories of the animals she worked with. There was Daisy, the shy beagle who shyly nuzzled against anyone after a bit of patience, and Max, the stubborn tabby who pounced with fervor on anything that moved. They were not just animals, they were voices waiting to be heard. However, connecting the community with these personalities required more than vibrant posters. "Mom," she said, breaking her silence. "I actually want to do a speech about the animals for the school's morning assembly." Her mother paused mid-sip, brow raised as if questioning Lily's sanity. "That's a large undertaking, honey," she replied cautiously. "You need to consider the audience." "I know that." Lily's resolve bit back against the doubts creeping into her mind. "I just feel that if I can show them how special these animals are, they'll want to help." The interest in her mother's eyes ignited a spark within Lily. It was true she needed to not only present the information but also draw people in. She needed to weave a narrative that turned cold indifference into warm empathy. Minds couldn't change without stories, and those stories had to come from her. Focused and invigorated, Lily set about strategizing. Between her classes and the hours spent at the shelter, she stayed up late sketching poster ideas, drafting outlines for her speech, and honing her storytelling craft. She practiced in the mirror, correcting her posture, envisioning her audience, trying to anticipate questions that may arise. Yet the crushing fear was always there, lurking just beneath her determination. What if nobody listened? What if they laughed? These troubling thoughts prowled at the edges of her focus, demanding attention. Her peers could be judgmental, and the adults behind the corporation were not likely to be swayed by the earnestness of a 12-year-old girl. As those insecurities weighed heavy on her spirit, a revelation began to crystallize. Perhaps she didn't need to convince everyone all at once. Instead, she could aim for hearts one story at a time, and if she could anchor her initiative in authenticity, her passion might draw people in. She would not ask for blind support, she would share why these animals mattered. Later that day, after putting her initial ideas on paper, she spent long hours at the shelter, working closely with Sam. Together, they brainstormed catchy slogans for the posters and shared laughs, crafting a strategy that felt alive. Sam's insights challenged her, forcing her to refine her thoughts further. Each session with Sam reinforced her belief in what they were trying to achieve, grounding her thoughts amidst the chaos. However, the enormity of her ambition was not lost on her. With each decision made, she felt the pressure build, the weight of her dreams mixed with her inherent fears. A double-edged sword that empowered her and threatened to topple her ambition. That evening, as she prepared to sleep, an unshakable thought hit her: it wasn't just about the animals anymore, it was about her too. This was a defining moment, where not just their future, but her identity, was on the line. She was stepping into a world that demanded resilience and tenacity, and there was no turning back. With renewed focus, Lily took a deep breath, propelling herself into an unwavering narrative. That night, she finalized the outline for her speech as she mentally prepared to confront the skepticism that awaited her. The moment of truth was not far off, and there was no doubt in her heart this was just the beginning. Tomorrow, she would face her fears, but with a raw determination. No more questioning if she was enough, she would push herself toward a revelation that could open doors for both herself and the shelter. If she could stand there, speak her truth, maybe, just maybe, the tide would begin to change. However, that victory would come at a cost, as she soon discovered that the biggest obstacles were closer than she realized. The corporation was not as indifferent as they appeared, they had an agenda, and it seemed that they were prepared to directly confront anyone who dared to challenge it. The morning of the assembly arrived, shrouded in a mist of anticipation that swirled around Lily like a heightened atmosphere charged with energy. As she walked through the school corridors, she felt a curious mixture of excitement and fear tugging at her gut. The walls echoed with the chatter of her peers, oblivious to the storm brewing within her. They would be observers today, not just students in their seats, but potential allies in her quest. As she entered the auditorium, the sight of the stage sent a tremor through her. Compared to the comfortable familiarity of the shelter, this podium felt monumental, a place where her thoughts would transition into reality. With a deep breath, she stepped into the space where she would attempt to bridge the gap between humankind and the lives of those innocent animals. The first speaker, a popular senior, droned on about future college options, showing slides of exotic locations. Although her words held the crowd's attention, Lily found herself tuning out, anxiously rehearsing her story in her mind. This was her moment, not just for the animals but for herself, a chance to assert her voice against a sea of self-doubt. When her name was finally called, her heart raced as she ascended the steps, grasping the edges of the podium with clammy hands. She surveyed the sea of faces, some curious, others skeptical. A knot tightened in her throat. Outwardly, she appeared composed, but internally, a storm raged. What if she stumbled? What if they mocked her? Unwavering, she began, her voice steady yet low at first. Today, I want to share the stories of a few friends of mine who live at the local shelter. They wait for their chance to be loved. Each sentence folded into the next, a tapestry of narratives about Daisy and Max unraveling before the audience, their stories infused with her emotions. Her eyes sparkled as she spoke of Daisy's gentle nature and Max's playful antics. She painted images of their lives, rich with longing and hope. Gradually, she noticed the room quieting. Eyes that had shifted about or whispered now remained fixed upon her. It was as though they were leaning in, pulling her energy into their own. For the first time, she felt the connection she had been yearning for, a flicker of understanding and warmth creeping over the crowd like sunlight breaking through clouds. But vulnerability came at a price. As she reached the climax of her speech, a sliver of doubt wormed its way into her mind. Could she sustain this moment of connection? Would the passion she felt resonate with them? Then came the moments that unwrapped the narrative thread just when she thought she was safe. She introduced a poignant moment from the previous week when an elderly man had come to adopt a cat. The man had spoken to her about solitude and how the company of an animal could fill a void. She felt a tremor in her voice as she recounted, his eyes lighting up at the thought of a companion. This moment held a deeper connection, a revelation about the unspoken bond between humans and animals, a lesson not typically taught in classrooms. Just as she realized how profoundly this connection mattered, a loud snicker erupted from the back of the room. Lily's stomach dropped. The laughter was cutting, mocking the entire sentiment she had poured her heart into. In that instant, her vision blurred. She faltered, swallowing hard, preparing to retreat into the shadows of her own insecurities. But just then, she saw Sam in the crowd, nodding, encouraging her with a fleeting smile. Fueled by an instinctive retaliation against fear, her voice grew firmer. This is not just about adopting pets, it's about compassion, community, and overcoming life's challenges together. Her words resonated with a conviction that surprised even herself. As she finished her speech, an unfamiliar force hummed through her, a blend of fear and empowerment. The auditorium erupted in a mix of applause and murmurs. Though there were lingering naysayers, most seemed engaged. A shift had begun, and she couldn't retreat now. It was no longer just about the animals, she had stepped into her own personhood. But as she stepped away from the podium, a chill ran down her spine. She could sense that the corporation's representatives who had been present were no longer mere observers. Their agenda loomed like storm clouds on the horizon, and she knew their confrontation was imminent. This was just the beginning of a much larger battle. As whispers followed her down the hall, Lily's resolve deepened. Diagrams and plans were taking form in her mind. There was still much to do, and it was time to prepare for the inevitable clash with those who would oppose her fierce pursuit of compassion and change. The aftermath of the assembly reverberated through the halls of school, but it was Lily's heart that felt the most tumultuous echo. As she exited the auditorium, she encountered a gaggle of her classmates. Some rushed past, absorbed in their own lives, while a few lingered, their gazes weighing heavy on her. Questions buzzed in her mind. Did they get it? Did she matter? No sooner had she collected her thoughts than a pair of girls approached. Tall and confident, they were known for their sharp tongues and sharper stares. "Nice speech, Lily," one said, though the smirk suggested anything but sincerity. The other laughed lightly, yeah, if only we could all just adopt 1,000 pets and change the world. Painful heat surged across Lily's cheeks. The snicker behind her felt smothering. Were they taunting her? Or was she perhaps too sensitive, too attached to the message she had just delivered? The venom in their laughter wrapped around her like a heavy blanket. But deep down, under the childish sting, another feeling began to stir within her, defiance. She had bared her heart publicly, and for what? To wilt beneath their mockery or let it fuel her fire? So many had responded with thoughtfulness, with empathy. Could she let the minority drown out the majority? Gathering her resolve like an armor, she straightened her shoulders and pressed past them, determined. Later that afternoon, she sat in the quiet sanctuary of the animal shelter, the soft rustling of paws against the floor greeting her like a hug. As she stroked Daisy, the soft fur grounded her, making the weight of her earlier interactions fade. This place felt familiar and safe, yet today it resonated with a new sense of urgency. She couldn't just be a bystander anymore, her voice had the capacity to transform kindness into action. Reflecting on her speech, she realized she had stepped into a new phase of her life, one that required more than mere words she had spoken. The need to strategize action loomed. Her mind buzzed with ideas: fundraisers, awareness campaigns, partnerships with local businesses to support the shelter. Yet the cloud of confrontation loomed overhead as she recalled the representatives lurking in the background. They would surely target her plan, aiming to uphold their veil of indifference. She needed allies. Real allies who would stand shoulder to shoulder, who would feel as fiercely as she did. Instead of avoiding the confrontation ahead, she would face it with clarity and purpose. She reached for her phone and began typing a message to Sam, a proposal for a meeting that evening with a small group of their closest friends. Hey! Can we meet to brainstorm about shelter ideas? Could really use your thoughts. Let us make a difference together. The act of reaching out was empowering. She was no longer the isolated girl, burdened by fear, she was figuring out the shape of her world, one decision at a time. That evening, around a makeshift table jammed into the little corner of the shelter, Lily sat with Sam and two other supportive friends. They listened attentively as she laid out her vision, her ideas budding with potential. With each suggestion and piece of feedback, she felt a spark of excitement. This wasn't just her mission, they had all become intricately intertwined in it. But her heart also thudded with the uncertainty of what lay ahead. Together they would face the corporation's opposition, but how would they counter the dismissive sneers? As the night wore on and plans took shape, a flicker of doubt nagged at her. Were they ready for the fight? The distant sound of barking punctuated her introspection, a reminder of the stakes. It was not merely about saving animals, it was about instilling compassion in the hearts of her peers, a task that could break or strengthen her could not ignore. As they wrapped up their session, Lily felt the robust weight of possibility. She had crossed an invisible line from aspiration into action, yet she sensed the winds of resistance swirling closer. Tomorrow, the first challenge awaited, a meeting with those very representatives who threatened to undermine everything she believed in. The confrontation would test not only her conviction but also their unity. The moment loomed closer, and she could feel it, something unmistakable was about to unravel. Lily woke before dawn, anxiety curling around her thoughts like a vine tightening its grip. The sun had yet to rise, but the day loomed ahead, saturated with potential and trepidation. As she lay in bed, she replayed the conversations from the previous night, each word echoing with newfound significance. Sam's insightful comments rekindled her resolve, but doubts snaked through her consciousness. What if they dismiss us? The thought caught in her throat, tightening like a noose. Despite her friends rallying behind her, a nagging fear clung to her. The representatives were seasoned and detached, seemingly impervious to passion and idealism. Could they withstand the weight of their dismissive laughter? Determined to shake off the encroaching shadows, she slid out of bed and pulled her notebook from the shelf. She sketched a rough outline of her ideas for the meeting. Step by step, she documented her thoughts, persuasive arguments, statistics about animal welfare, and emotional anecdotes that could resonate with her peers. She had to prepare, to arm herself with facts and experiences. The cool morning air invigorated her as she walked to school, her steps gaining momentum as she approached the institution that felt more like a battleground with each passing day. The artifice of normalcy lay painted over countless conversations and daily exchanges, laughter blending with voices of indifference, activism smothered by apathy. Before the first bell rang, she convened with Sam and their friends at a discreet corner of the school courtyard. As they gathered, Lily felt the collective heartbeat of their camaraderie, each face reflected a commitment to the cause. But in the corners of their minds, doubt simmered. The atmosphere was charged with unspoken questions. Are we really ready for this? What if they just laugh at us again? One friend asked, her brow furrowing with concern. Lily inhaled sharply. If they laugh, we'll show them we're still here. We'll make them listen. Fueled by the resolve to confront their complacency, she assigned specific roles and responsibilities for the meeting. Together, they crafted responses to potential challenges the representatives might present. Sam, ever the level head, suggested they start with personal stories. Let us connect it to our lives, make it real, he urged. Yes, and let us remind them these are not just statistics. Each case is a heart just like ours, Lily affirmed, sealing their pact of solidarity. The morning dragged on with an agonizing pace, each tick of the clock amplifying her tension. By the time the meeting arrived, her mind raced a mixture of anticipation and dread tightening her chest. As they entered the conference room, the atmosphere shifted. The representatives loomed at the long table, each face a mask of indifference. Their polished demeanor seemed insurmountable, a wall erected against the earnestness that flooded Lily's heart. They began with small talk, seemingly disinterested. But Lily felt ready. With Sam's encouraging nod and the supportive whisper of her friends beside her, she squared her shoulders and launched into her presentation. The words flowed with unexpected clarity, concepts tumbling into one another: empathy, responsibility, and change. Yet, even as she spoke, she sensed their skepticism. The representatives leaned back in their chairs, exchanging glances that spoke of dismissal rather than engagement. As she finished her opening statement, a heavy silence hung in the air, pregnant with tension. One representative finally leaned forward, the corner of his mouth twisting into a smirk. And how exactly do you plan on instigating such change in a community that largely prioritizes profit over puppies? Lily's heart quickened, her breath catching slightly. This was at the moment she had foreseen, where her spirit would either crumble or ignite. The laughter from the auditorium echoed faintly in her mind, challenging her to fold. But the girl who had stepped into action wasn't the same one who had hesitated before. Deep within her surged a realization, a rising tide, pushing her to respond, to confront real adversity head-on. We can start by opening their eyes, Lily replied, her voice steady. We can make them see the lives behind those statistics and profits. One heart at a time. As she spoke, she could feel the weight of her words pressing down on their skepticism, each syllable becoming an arrow aimed at their indifference. The stakes were higher than ever, and the confrontation had ignited a fire within her. But would it be enough? Would her resolve withstand the backlash that loomed on the horizon? This moment was just the beginning, and she had dared to hope for more. The pivotal clash was far from over, but each step forward drew her closer to a reality where kindness wasn't mocked but embraced. The air crackled as she prepared for their response, knowing full well that what came next would either break her or solidify her resolve. The realization dawned that the true test of her courage was yet to come. The representative's smirk deepened, and Lily braced herself for the inevitable onslaught. The atmosphere felt charged with an electric tension, the kind that could either spur her on or knock the breath from her lungs. So we're going to change the world, are we? With a few heartfelt anecdotes. His voice dripped with condescension, and several heads bobbed in silent agreement around the table. Lily clenched her fists, the heat rising in her cheeks. It starts with awareness, she shot back, momentarily surprised by the conviction reverberating in her voice. If you don't believe in the power of storytelling, if you don't think it can resonate with people, you're underestimating how humanity works. As she spoke, Lily took a step forward. Each word was a paddle, guiding her through the turbulent waters of uncertainty. She glanced at Sam, who nodded, silently encouraging her to push further. This isn't just about the animals, she continued, her voice gaining strength. It's about shifting the mindset of a generation. It's about creating lasting change that aligns with compassion, something your company seems to have forgotten. For a fleeting moment, the representatives appeared unsettled, exchanging glances that suggested her words had penetrated the armor of skepticism surrounding their facade. But then, the same representative countered, his voice cold and steady, "You're deluding yourself if you think emotion will sway business decisions." Emotion. It echoed in her mind, twisting and pleading for recognition. Hadn't she felt it in every moment spent volunteering? Hadn't she seen it resonate in the hearts of everyone who walked away from that shelter with a wagging tail beside them? "I'm not deluding myself, I'm challenging a narrative." Lily took a deep breath, leaning into the anxiety creeping back in. Every time you choose profit over empathy, you miss the opportunity for connection, real connection. She forced herself to hold his gaze. We can generate awareness through campaigns, social media, and in our community, but it requires risking the status quo. The silence following her words wound tighter around them. Lily's heart raced, the exchange igniting a newfound determination within her. What if this was her moment to turn the tides? To expose the very core of their indifference, to show the tangible impact of their decisions. But the moment didn't last. A woman beside the representative finally spoke, her expression softened but guarded. "You're passionate, I'll give you that. But passion doesn't pay bills. What are your concrete plans?" Concrete plans. A seed had been planted, and as Lily faltered, she realized she hadn't prepared for this. Could she think fast enough to combine her ideals with practicality? It required more than mere passion, it needed strategy. Calm washed over her, filled with the recognition of her own abilities. She began to describe their proposed campaigns, detailing how they could partner with local businesses to raise funds for the shelter and how they could create events to foster community involvement. Each point built on another, forming a web of possibilities that began to resonate with the crowd. As she spoke, she caught glimpses of uncertainty reflected in their faces. Their walls were still high, but she could see cracks forming. Her heart swelled, a rush of hope mingled with fear, each sentence shifting the atmosphere from skepticism to tentative interest. Passion fuels ideas, but ideas need structure and support, she concluded, her voice steadying. With your help, we can create a model that transforms our community, showing how compassion can also lead to profit. The future of your business lies in adapting to what people really value. As silence settled again, Lily felt the weight of her convictions balancing on an edge. She had proposed a way forward, but would they recognize it? Would they appreciate the chance to evolve alongside a generation committed to progress? Their hesitation lingered in the air, leaving her toes curled in tension. Were they merely waiting for the next jab, or had she actually planted a seed of curiosity? Suddenly, the representative who had first smirked leaned back, his expression inscrutable. "Interesting. Perhaps we'll consider your approach." Lily's stomach dropped, the ambiguity left her spiraling into uncertainty. Was that really an invitation to explore change, or merely a polite dismissal? The tension of the moment shimmered with possibilities and unanswered questions. What if she had cracked the door open, but the invitation to step inside came at a cost greater than she anticipated? As they wrapped up, Lily felt the weight of her own desire swell, a tenacious determination to push forward. Her resolve clung to her, she had taken a stand. But the nagging uncertainty lingered. The confrontation was just a prologue. Outside the conference room, the world awaited, bright and unyielding. It loomed with promises of challenge and growth, whispering of the risks yet to come as she fought to navigate the rocky terrain of ambition and courage. With each step into the uncertain future, she couldn't shake the feeling that the battle ahead would demand even more than this, and she would need every ounce of clarity and strength she could muster to confront those waiting for her back home. The moment was ripe not just for change but for unexpected challenges that lurked at every corner. Would she be ready to face them head-on? Lily stepped outside the corporate building, pulling in a deep breath of fresh air, seeking solace from the stagnant atmosphere of the conference room. Her mind whirled with the echoes of the meeting, each skepticism, every raised eyebrow replaying in her thoughts like a dissonant chord. She couldn't shake the looming shadows of doubt that crept in, mingling with the adrenaline left pulsating through her veins. She walked a few blocks, trying to redirect her racing thoughts. Despite all the uncertainty, a flicker of hope ignited within her. Maybe, just maybe, she had sown a seed of change in those hardened hearts. But how would she nurture it? The urgency to solidify her vision surged with relentless force. Ideas began to collide, strategies and tactics clamored for attention, hoping to forge a structured plan from the emotional resonance she invoked. Stopping at a small cafe, Lily sat down, her fingers tapping nervously against the table. She grabbed a napkin, determined to capture the swirling thoughts before they faded away. It felt oddly empowering to sit in this space, the aroma of coffee and pastries coaxing her spirit into greater clarity. Her pen danced across the napkin as she outlined concrete steps. Partnership opportunities, marketing strategies, community engagement. Each concept was met with the growing realization that she was capable of far more than she had previously acknowledged. Initially, it felt daunting, yet as she sketched and continuously adapted her ideas, excitement began to course through her. This project could be more than mere changes in perspective. It could provide real, tangible support to the animals in need. But reality rudely interrupted her reverie. What if she faced resistance, even hostility, from the businesses she approached? What if they remained stubbornly detached, stuck in their ways? The thought stung, a jarring reminder of the representative's cold dismissal. "No one else can do this for me," she whispered under her breath. The weight of personal responsibility settled heavily on her shoulders. This was her mission, and she needed to communicate it with conviction and adaptability. Suddenly, another thought pierced through her self-doubt. What if she reached out to others who shared her vision? Could she enlist the help of her friends, using their diverse talents to build a cohesive strategy? Her heart raced at the idea. Collaboration held the potential to forge greater connections and broaden the scope of their outreach. Perhaps Sam's connections with local businesses could bridge the gap where her determination fell short. As she left the cafe, a new resolve set in. This was no longer a solo endeavor. Each challenge that lay ahead felt more manageable as she envisioned embracing the strengths of those around her. She asked herself, what would it take to rally her friends behind her in this mission? That evening, Lily gathered her small circle, sharing her vision passionately. With every word, she could see their doubts begin to dissolve, replaced by a shared enthusiasm that bubbled among them. Ideas exploded, laughter mingled with brainstorming, and what began as an outline on a napkin morphed into a vibrant roadmap filled with strategies and creative approaches. Yet, a shadow lingered at the edges of her happiness, the looming challenge of executing these ideas and addressing the realities of those who might oppose her efforts. The representatives hadn't dismissed her entirely, they had simply seemed hesitant to believe in transformative change. A nagging worry began to fester. What if she faced an outright refusal again when she sought support for her plans? Would their previous doubts extinguish the momentum she had so carefully built? The pressure of questioning crept in again, weighing heavily on her mind. As she set out to solidify her plans with her team, she sensed a wave of inner conflict brewing. This was more than a campaign, it was a test of her capability and her belief in the project's purpose. As the night progressed, the tension resolved itself into a fragile determination. She would face any opposition, armed with a plan and bolstered by her friends. The real battle lay ahead, and, despite the discomfort of uncertainty, a storm of resolve brewed within her. Would she emerge from this endeavor transformed, more confident and capable? Or would the weight of others' skepticism dim her light? The fate of her project and her growth stood on a precipice, waiting for her next move. With her heart pounding and anticipation surging, she knew this was just the beginning. The real challenge awaited, and she would need to confront the very people who had questioned her, perhaps even face the same representative who had doubted her so openly just days before. The morning sun filtered through the blinds as Lily sat at her makeshift desk, a clutter of papers and coffee cups sprawled before her. The energy of the previous night's brainstorming session lingered, yet a tide of doubt once again threatened to drown her resolve. She had felt empowered among her friends, their enthusiasm a salve against self-doubt, but now, alone with her thoughts, shadows lurked in the corners of her mind. Armed with a determined mindset, she began to outline a more concentrated approach. Each interaction she had with businesses would require careful crafting, not only of words but of her own inner strength. She would need to showcase her passion without hesitation, allowing it to guide her as she stepped back into the fray. The reality of potential rejection hung palpably in the air like a storm cloud about to burst. What could she say to make them understand? What narrative would resonate? Drawing a breath, she picked up her phone, dialing Sam's number. With every ring, her anxiety welled. What if she couldn't rally him as she had the night before? The familiar sound of Sam's voice, light and encouraging, grounded her as he picked up. She revisited their ideas, outlining a more concrete presentation they could deliver to the local businesses. "Let us not just ask them to join us," she said, feeling the weight of her words. "Let us show them what this means. We could create a partnership pitch that highlights the impact we're aiming for." If they could see the bigger picture, Sam finished, his energy feeding into her momentum. "We need to focus not just on the animals but also on the community's role in this transformation." As they continued to strategize, Lily felt a rush of optimism. A few days ago, she had been uncertain about her voice, yet now she felt that voice growing fortified by purpose. Sam was ready to dive deeper, enlisting more friends to help craft an effective presentation. It was a relief to acknowledge that this mission was hers alone, but rather a collective effort built on courage and a strong vision. The next day, they gathered with a larger group of friends at a community space, hearts and minds aligned towards a shared objective. Every brainstorming session simmered with creativity, each member contributing their unique skills and insights. They discussed potential visual materials, projections of statistics that showcased community involvement alongside the plight of animals. Lily found herself slipping into roles she had never considered: designer, presenter, and strategist. But with excitement came unease. As they poured hours into preparing, the looming question nagged at her: what if they faced relentless skepticism? The potential for backlash felt palpable, and she wrestled internally with self-doubt. Days passed, leading to the pivotal meeting with the first business. As they took their seats in the conference room, Lily was acutely aware of the representative's cautious stares. She could feel the tremor of her heartbeat in her fingertips, but as the presentation unfolded, something within her steadied. Their passion had shined brightly, illuminating every purpose she felt was intrinsically tied to the venture. With Sam and the others by her side, she sensed their supportive energy bolstering her confidence. However, as questions began to arise, particularly from one prominent member who echoed skepticism over their intentions, Lily felt her throat tighten. The familiar surge of self-doubt threatened her composure. What if this was it? What if their efforts crumbled under scrutiny? Summoning courage, she locked eyes with her friend group, silently reminding herself of the journey they had collectively embarked on. Drawing a breath deep from her core, she confronted the representative's criticisms head-on, tracing the emotional and logical links between their cause and the mutual benefit for the community and the businesses. Yet, even as she began to articulate the values that guided her passion, she recognized a further challenge rising: in internal reckoning. What would it take for her to truly embrace this role as a leader, to guide others confidently despite her fear? The question spiraled as she watched the representative's expression transform: doubt replaced by a glimmer of intrigue, though still devoid of full support. As the meeting concluded, with a tentative promise of further discussions and follow-ups, Lily left the room elated yet pensive. It had been a delicate dance between confidence and vulnerability, and though the outcome felt uncertain, a seismic shift within her had occurred. She knew now that resilience wasn't about the absence of fear, but rather the decision to act despite it. As she stepped outside, the sun kissed her skin, warmth mingling with uncertainty. Her personal journey had found traction, but the deeper challenges loomed. She needed to confront not only other representatives but the very fabric of herself that held fear. What transformations awaited her in the harsh light of continued judgment? The time was coming to confront not only others but to challenge the narrative she had told herself about her capabilities. With a steely gaze towards the horizon, she knew this was just the beginning of a deeper exploration. The real test was still ahead. Lily stood before the stark facade of the corporation's headquarters, a whirlwind of anticipation flooding her senses. The weight of her previous meetings hung heavily upon her. Today was her chance to solidify everything she aimed for. She reflected on the journey that had led her here, a journey marked by countless hours of preparation, endless brainstorming sessions with her friends, and moments of fighting against her own self-doubt. Today, she was no longer just an eager 12-year-old seeking to save animals. She was a force, ready to challenge the status quo. Stepping inside, she felt the cold air wash over her, reminding her of the thin veneer of corporate indifference she was about to confront. As the meeting convened, the sturdy table stretched before her, lined with stern-faced representatives who embodied the institution's resistant momentum. Yet, now, she held a secret weapon, a presentation meticulously crafted to highlight tangible benefits alongside compelling stories. To her left, Sam sat, a comforting presence that reinforced her resolve. Lily cleared her throat, her voice steady as she opened her presentation. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us again. Today, we're not just asking for help, we're offering an opportunity to partner with a passionate community initiative that can truly foster change. This time, her voice rang out with conviction. Each point articulated resonated with the commitment she felt for both the animals and the people of Maplewood. With every statistic cited and anecdote shared from their shelter experiences, Lily watched the representatives lean in slightly, their attention shifting as they engaged with her narrative. The crux of their approach became apparent. This was not just about saving a shelter, it was about harnessing the inherent power of empathy to drive community engagement for mutual benefit. They presented partnerships that would actively involve the corporation, positioning it as a community advocate whilst demonstrating an undeniable return on investment. Midway through, a representative posed a question, this time framed with a softer edge. You have great enthusiasm, but how will you ensure sustained community interest? How can we prevent this from being a fleeting endeavor? Lily felt the air shift. This was her moment. She leaned forward, excitement coursing through her. It's about building a legacy, one story at a time. She emphasized the need for educational outreach within the community, demonstrating statistics on the long-term impacts of animal companionship on well-being. By connecting with schools and local organizations, they could instill a culture of compassion that transcended mere fundraising. The room filled with deliberation as she concluded. Silence lingered heavily momentarily before a representative spoke, now with a note of caution fading to curiosity. We appreciate your dedication and the strategic insight you've provided. We can see potential here. A small victory surged within her, but she dared not settle for small victories. This was not the end, it was merely the beginning. Over the next few weeks, negotiations unfolded, and to her astonishment, they committed to a partnership, providing financial backing for their initiatives. Recognition and validation began to flow her way. As the days progressed, her efforts expanded rapidly. Community events flourished, where she and her friends showcased the shelter's animals not just as pets, but as members of their community, beloved companions in the hearts and homes of many. Local businesses joined in, and with each partnership forged, the bonds of empathy strengthened. Lily's confidence soared. She was no longer that hesitant girl frozen by self-doubt but a recognized leader among her peers, her voice echoing in the assembly, filled with passion and purpose. As she stood surrounded by smiling faces at an adoption event, the warm sun enveloping her, she felt the fulfilling weight of her achievements. In that moment, she realized that she had not merely saved a shelter, she had forged invaluable connections that would ripple through her community for years to come. The corporation's role had shifted from a looming threat to an ally, and more importantly, she had proven to herself that her voice mattered. Embracing her journey of growth, she acknowledged that stepping into the future meant carrying the stories of Daisy, Max, and the many others who had transformed not just her summer, but the essence of her young life. Today, Lily Johnson stood as an emblem of resilience and compassion, a testament to the power of determination and the ability to inspire hope. Now was the time to celebrate success, but also to brace herself for the journey ahead. Even as obstacles continued to rise, she felt equipped to tackle them head-on with her heart and mind aligned, ready to take on whatever came next. And remember, this thrilling journey doesn't end here. You need to subscribe now to stay connected with our next exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Like this video to feed the algorithm and help more hearts find hope. Don't wait even one more second to share this with at least 5 friends who need to see Lily's journey unfold. Drop your thoughts and theories in the comments. Let us continue to spread the love and inspiration together.